In this lesson, we're going to talk about the dictionary collection. And so this is the second collection that we'll talk about in this series. The dictionary is similar to the list collection, except that you create a key as a primary means of accessing a given member of that collection. So think of a Webster's dictionary. You have the key word, the word that you want to define, and then the definition for that word that's associated with it. So the same is true with the dictionary collection type, thus the name dictionary. You have a key and then the larger value that's associated with it. So the key and the value can be of any type, but generally you're going to, at least in my experience, you're going to use something like a string or an integer as the key, and then a type will be a specific instance of a class, for example, car class, but it could be anything, okay? Think of the key as anything that's meaningful inside of your system. Anything that's meaningful, it just has to be unique. So if you're working with cars, you might make the key the VIN number and the value an object of type car that stores the make, the model, the year, and so on, all right? The VIN is usually mutually exclusive. No two cars have the same VIN, so it's a good candidate for a key. The make or the model or the year or the color are not good keys, typically, because many cars will share the same make, the same model, and so it doesn't really pass the criteria of being a key. Or if you're working on a loan or a financing application, you might choose some loan identification number that's internal to the system you're working on, or perhaps the address of a given home, or even the first and last name of the applicant, or possibly a social security number of the applicant. And then the value part of the equation would be an instance of a class that has all of that loan information in it. Now, of those, the loan identifier, the home address might be an okay key. However, there's usually spaces and periods and things that can be misspelled or spelled different ways. It won't be an exact match, perhaps. First name and last name may not be a good key because there might be the same applicant may have multiple loans in the system, or multiple applicants share the same name. All right, but usually a social security number in the United States would be something that would be unique to every individual, ideally, unless there's some fraud going on there. So, any rate, the key always allows you to look up a value without using indexes like we were doing with the list collection or back when we were working with arrays. So, back when we were working with the list, that T, the formal definition of the list of T, it had that capital T, and I said that just stands for the type. Well, as you can see, dictionary has two generic values: the T, the type of the key, and the type of the value, the T key and the T value. All right, and so essentially, when we're working with dictionaries, we're working with name-value pairs. A phrase that you'll hear often: there is a name or a key, and then the value, and they're paired together. Okay. So, at any rate, let's talk about creating a dictionary. We could go through the exercise of creating instances of the car class, but I'm going to jump directly to object initializers. So we'll go dictionary of type string, comma car. All right, and we'll call this cars equals new dictionary of type string car. All right, like so. So the key will be a string, and then the value that we store associated with that string, that key, will be of type car. Hopefully that makes sense. And so now we'll just go cars.add, and notice that this time the add method has two input parameters. The lists version of the add method only had one input parameter, the value itself that you want to store, which would typically be like a car, okay, like we saw previously. However, this time we have to give it a string and a car. So if we wanted to give it a VIN number, I'll just create a very simple VIN of V1, and then we'll give it the car itself. So a new car, and this is where the object initializer part comes in handy. So we'll go make equals BMW, model equals 528i, the year equals 2010, and the color equals black. And so we'll just keep doing that. We'll give it a VIN of V2, a really flimsy VIN number, but Usually they're extremely long. Okay, so now we have our dictionary that contains 3 cars inside of it, and now we can do what we've always done up to this point, which is to do for tab. So the cars still has a count. So we'll do that, and then we'll go result plus equals cars dot, and here we'll still use element add I dot, and here I'm going to display the key, and then I will, in fact, let me display that. Probably should use a string dot format, but I'll just go ahead and concatenate these two guys in here. So an opening H2 tag, so a header 2, and then a closing H2. That should give it some visual separation. And then we'll go cars.element at I dot, and we'll go value. And so now what type is value? It's an instance of the cars, or it's a member of the cars collection. It should be of type car. So yes, I can still strongly typed, the beauty of strongly typed, I can get to all of the cars properties and even get to the format details for display method, like so. Let's go ahead and split these up on multiple lines like that, and so we should get some interesting results here. Okay, so now we get V1, V2, V3, the VIN numbers, which are the keys, which we wanted to represent as heading 2 tags, and then the familiar output that we've been using up to this point. Okay, great. And just note that you can do the same thing that you've done here, and I'll just paste it in because I don't want to take the time to type this all on camera. So that we used object initializers. Let's go ahead and give a collection initializer. And again, I'm just going to paste it in from some code I've got on my clipboard, like so. And you can see the same thing here, except that right after we give it the type and call the constructor, then we open up curly brace, and then inside of that we create 3 new dictionary items. The first part of the dictionary item will be the key, comma, and then the new instance of the car class, like so. All right, so VIN, comma, car. Notice I put a comma to separate each of the dictionary items in our cars dictionary, and then everything else will work the same as before. Okay. Now, you can do some things like we saw how we can access an item at a given element, but that's not really interesting. One of the things that we said was a distinguishing factor of the dictionary is that you could use the key instead to grab a given item out of the collection. So let me comment this out and show you how you would go about doing that. If you just needed one item, you would do something like this. I'm going to create a local member variable called v2 of type car, and then I'm going to go if cars.try get value. So this is the preferred way to grab a value given a string. So we'll give it the string of v2, comma, and then we'll get an out v2, like so, and then result plus equals v2.format for display. All right, so we've seen this try get something in the past, or try parse. This is the same idea, try get value. Is there a key called v2? If so, then retrieve that associated value out and put it into this out parameter of the same type, of type v2. And now that we have that and we've successfully tried to get the value, then we'll just call format details for display. All right, great. And then the final thing, kind of along these same lines, how do you remove an item from the collection? Let's go back up to here, and I'm going to remove an item. So if cars dot remove v1, then result plus equals successfully removed v1, and I'll just put a line break here for some visual separation. And notice that the remove method gives us a Boolean if it was successful, if it successfully found a key called v1 inside of the dictionary. And so now we should only get 2 items displayed in our loop, the v2 and the v3. All right? All right, so we talked about quite a few things here. The dictionary of type T key, T value, what those T keys and T values stand for. They're the types that we want to use inside of our dictionary. We can use any type that we need, but typically we're going to use something like a string or an integer for the key, and then the value will be an instance of some data type or the class that we want to create instances of and store inside of our dictionary. We saw how we can then add new items to our dictionary by providing both the key and an instance of a given class in this particular case, because we've defined, we've made that generic collection into a specific collection of type string car, right? And then I showed examples of how to use object initializers and collection initializers, and then how to use the key in order to remove items, and how to retrieve items from the collection, and how to iterate through grabbing the key or grabbing the value. The value is strongly typed, so we can grab any of its properties or methods, right? All right, so let's continue on the next lesson. See you there. Thanks.